Spartans! Are you not entertained? What a fight! What a warrior!
Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point. What is good, y'all? Welcome back to the Puncher's Point. This episode is one that I'm going to have to take on the chin and say the three hardest words that any human on planet Earth has had to say. I was wrong. Because, ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Dubois defeats Fabio Wardley by TKO in the 11th round to become the new WBO Heavyweight Champion. Now, first off, shout out to Dynamite Daniel Dubois. I mean, every single time you underestimate this guy, except for Usyk, obviously, every single time you underestimate this guy just comes back and just shuts everybody up, proves them wrong. He got knocked down 2 times within the first 3 rounds, and it looked like this was going to be a Fabio Wardley fight until Daniel Dubois had a nice little moment right in between rounds where his coach slapped him in the face and told him, hey, wake up. And ever since that moment in the fight, Daniel Dubois just turned into a different fighter out there. I mean, he was just dominating Fabio Wardley throughout the rest of the fight. He won every single round where there wasn't a knockdown. And I got to give Daniel Dubois all the credit in the world, but I also got to give Wardley a lot of credit as well. I mean, to go in there with your first ever world champion and not only to be able to take as many punches as you did, but also stay on your feet and basically ride through it. I got to give Fabio Wardley a lot of credit. I don't think this is going to be the first time that we see Fabio Wardley in a world title match. I'm just going to say all that right now. However, with all that being said, we got to get into the fight grades. So, strategy grade is going to be first. Now, the 2 strategies of both fighters combined, I got to give it a 7.5. Now, as far as the keys to victory that I had for Daniel Dubois, the first one was set into traps or set up traps, and I think he did that very well. I feel like Daniel Dubois did a good job of using that jab/overhand right combo. I think that was probably my favorite combo in the entire fight. Daniel Dubois did a very good job of using that combo, and you could tell once he started clicking with that combo, there was no way out of it for Fabio Wardley. And he wanted to establish the jab first. That's what I liked about Daniel Dubois. Dubois wanted to establish that jab first. And once he got that jab established, the right hand started following along. He would throw that overhand right. And then eventually he would add the left hook into it as well. And then you just mix it all together, and Fabio Wardley didn't have an answer. So I will say, shout out to Daniel Dubois for establishing that jab first before establishing anything else. And then from there, you can kind of get into your toolbox a little bit when you realize that Wardley couldn't figure out that jab. The second key to victory that I had for Daniel Dubois was attack the head when lowered. And I said this was one of the biggest weaknesses that I said for Fabio Wardley. He had that same weakness as an Inoue or an Errol Spence, where when he tries to go to the body or he tries to throw his full force punches into a specific punch, he tends to lower his head. All that weight that he has thrown into that punch, all the leverage kind of pushes him forward and lowers him a little bit. And Daniel Dubois was able to counter that beautifully throughout this entire fight. He saw that Fabio Wardley was putting a little bit too much power into his punches, a little bit too much energy into those punches as well. And when he realized that Fabio Wardley was going to keep on ducking his head, he was going to lower his head, all that leverage and momentum was just going to lean forward on him, Daniel Dubois took action into it. And what I liked about Daniel Dubois was he waited for Fabio Wardley to throw that first punch, and he would throw in between that combination that Fabio Wardley would plan to throw. So Fabio Wardley would try to use a feint, and then he would try to come with a right hand, and he would miss. Daniel Dubois would clip him, and they would stop the entire momentum for Fabio Wardley. So I think Daniel Dubois did a very good job of that. And last but not least, slip onto the inside with his wide swings. Fabio Wardley had a lot of wide swings. That was one of the weaknesses that I have for Fabio Wardley. Even though I believe he was a good boxer, and he had a lot of elusive skills to his game, the wide hooks were going to be a very big problem for Fabio Wardley. And when Fabio Wardley would throw in those hooks, Dubois would just come in and just clip him in between them. He would slip onto the inside. You could tell that Fabio Wardley was uncomfortable with the game plan that Daniel Dubois had, especially when Daniel Dubois would slip his way onto the inside. The first key to victory that I had for Fabio Wardley was stick that jab. I didn't really see him stick that jab too well. Now, at the times he did, I feel like he had a good game plan with that. I feel like the problem was a lot of it had the same follow-ups and it was kind of predictable, and Daniel Dubois was able to read it. Use the lead left hook, that I did not see. And I feel like if he would have used that lead left hook a little bit more, instead of just trying to throw combinations and giving Daniel Dubois time to interrupt those combinations, I feel like if Fabio Wardley threw that left hook, that lead left hook a little bit more, I think he would have had a little bit more success. Now, he did knock him down twice in this fight, both with the right hand. And again, credit to Fabio Wardley, but once Daniel Dubois was able to figure out the pattern, there really wasn't much that he could do. And then last but not least, stay onto the outside and use jabs and straights. Now, this is what he tried to do. He tried to stay onto the outside, and he tried to use like feints and straights. I wish I could have seen a little bit more with his jab. And like I said, all it takes is a jab, I think, to beat Daniel Dubois. A good jab to beat Daniel Dubois. And I think Fabio Wardley was overcomplicating it a little bit, trying to throw straights after the jabs, which is a great strategy, don't get me wrong. But I think the problem was he was sticking with the same combination, and when he would miss or he would throw a wild hook or, you know, he wouldn't land on that punch, I feel like Daniel Dubois was just able to take over. So as far as strategy grade, I got to give it a 7.5. I think Daniel Dubois did exactly what he was supposed to do. I think Fabio Wardley had moments like clipping him with the uppercut in the later rounds, using the jab early, the overhand right early. I feel like he had moments, but at the same time, I think he could have established those keys to victory a lot more. So I'm going to give it a 7.5. Now, the entertainment/excitement grade. Well, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I give it a 9. This was a very exciting fight. It had the drama. It had the knockdowns. It had the exciting moments. It had both fighters take a momentum. But the problem was the only thing that doesn't make it a 10 was it wasn't a close fight. As much as we would like to say it was a close fight, it wasn't. Besides the 2 rounds where Fabio Wardley knocked him down, this was all Daniel Dubois. I'm surprised that I'm surprised that the doctors didn't stop this fight earlier. I feel like that fight could have been stopped in the 9th round, but they let it continue for a couple more rounds. And I do like this ref in this fight. I think this ref did a very good job of splitting them up when needed to be, warning them about the headbutts, making sure that Fabio Wardley was checked on, going to see the medic. I think he did a very good job with all of those. And I got to give that ref a lot of credit. However, this was a very exciting fight, a very entertaining fight. I do think it's going to be a candidate for fight of the year. I don't think it's going to win it. However, the only thing that could have made this fight a 10 was if it was a little more closer. If this fight was a little more tight. And because only one guy seemed to dominate in this fight, besides those 2 knockdowns, I got to give it a 9 out of 10. But it was a very, very exciting fight. It was one of the best heavyweight fights that I've seen in a very long time. I wouldn't put it above Wilder and Chisora. I think that fight was a lot more exciting. You had knockdowns from both parties, and on top of that, you had a back-and-forth fight that ended a split decision. I think that was a lot more exciting. However, Daniel Dubois and Fabio Wardley is not that far behind it as far as an entertaining fight. Now, the stakes for this fight. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. I'm going to give the stakes an 8 out of 10. You have the WBO title on the line. You have somebody like Daniel Dubois, who just came off of a loss to Usyk, and he lost to the same guy twice. However, he has another chance to become heavyweight champion. And a lot of us were trying to count out Daniel Dubois. You know, maybe the game has passed by him. And then you had this young up-and-comer in Fabio Wardley, a guy who was 20-0, 19 knockouts, had the boxing skills. And you look at him and you're like, oh, this could be the guy right here. You know, if he wins this belt, this is going to start shifting towards the new generation in boxing. So the stakes with the belt on the line and with the 2 opposite dynamics from each fighter, one who lost to the same guy twice and is trying to build his career back up, the other one trying to start his era in the heavyweight division. That right there is where the stakes are at. But the reason why I give it an 8 out of 10 is because you had that title on the line, and it definitely was going to be game-changing for both fighters. However, the reason why I don't give it a 10, it's not for undisputed, so I really can't give it the highest stakes. And then on top of that, how does this really affect that division after it happens? And we're going to talk about the impact in a little bit. But you had that one belt on the line. We all knew who the number 1 heavyweight was going to be anyway. It was going to be Alexander Usyk by the end of this fight, regardless. But there were going to be a lot of dust that was going to be covering the vision of what would be next after this fight, which leads me to impact. I got to give it an 8 out of 10 as well. After the fight, they asked Daniel Dubois what he wanted to do next. He didn't really get a clear answer out of Daniel Dubois. They asked Frank Warren what he wanted to do next. You didn't get a clear answer besides I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch. He's going to say that because both of these guys are under his belt, I believe. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but he's going to say that because both of those guys have a good working relationship with him. The fans started booing after he said rematch. They didn't want to see the rematch. Daniel Dubois outclassed him, and they wanted to see Daniel Dubois move on. Now, as far as the impact, there's not anything set in stone, which is why I give it an 8 out of 10. However, there is some fights that you can make in this heavyweight division, which is why I rate it so high. It's not like we're at a standstill with Daniel Dubois. Besides Usyk, you could make some fights happen. Again, the Anthony Joshua rematch, maybe that would do a lot of numbers. Deontay Wilder, so power versus power. Tyson Fury, you can do a whole Brit fight right there. So you have the mandatory challenger in Moses Atama, who I am a big fan of. I believe he is the future of the heavyweight division. So there's that fight right there. So there's definitely a lot of options for Daniel Dubois now since he is champion once again, a two-time heavyweight champion at that. But because there isn't really a clear answer on where they're going to go with this besides maybe a rematch, there is a rematch clause in there, so we're going to see if that gets honored. If not, then there is some fights for Daniel Dubois to make. So as far as impact, I got to give that an 8 out of 10 as well. I just don't think there's nothing clear, but I think there's a lot of options to benefit the heavyweight division. Now, when you put all of that together, your overall fight grade is an 8.13. That is going to be tied, and I feel like 8.13 is going to be a big grade that is going to be in the top 10 after this year or this season is all said and done. So 8.13, I think that's pretty fair to put it at. And so we get to the next question. What is next for Daniel Dubois? Well, if you had to ask me, like I said, there is a potential 4 to 5 fights that you can make in this heavyweight division. A is you can get the rematch clause with Fabio Wardley, but the fans didn't seem too happy about that one. You could do Dubois versus Usyk 3. I really don't think we want to see that. I think we know what the outcome is. Wilder and Dubois, and that makes an interesting fight. And the reason why I say that is because you got power versus power. You got somebody like Deontay Wilder who's got the power to knock out Dubois, but then you have somebody like Dubois who has the boxing ability. So that's where it gets really interesting. You have Tyson Fury, and to me, that's going to be a very interesting fight just because of like measurement wise. And you can say the same thing with Deontay Wilder because he is a taller fighter, but it's going to be interesting to see how Dubois approaches Tyson Fury. And guys like Dubois have been known to give Tyson Fury some trouble. You know, again, guys who have that type of power who can hit you with one shot and knock you down, those are guys that Tyson Fury has struggled with. Tyson Fury coming back from his little quick retirement. We all know how that goes with Tyson Fury. He had an okay fight, not the best fight in my opinion, against Makhmudov. But you kind of have to ask yourself, if he gets back into the ring again, maybe 2 times in this year, how good is Tyson Fury going to look? That's a question right there. And then the last fight is him versus Moses Atama. That's the fight I want to see right there. And the reason why is because Moses Atama needs a big fight. Now, he's just starting. That's the thing. Moses Atama, he just had a good fight against Franklin, I believe. But at the same time, Moses Atama is the future of this heavyweight division. And I really need to see Moses Atama fight some of these big guys. Now, again, we know what happens when you push him a little too early. Sometimes it results in something like what happened with Wardley. Maybe Atama is not ready. Maybe he gets in the ring with Dubois, and Dubois outclasses him too. However, I don't think that's the case with Moses Atama. I think Moses Atama is the guy that's going to take over this division, and I really want to see Moses Atama go up against Daniel Dubois, specifically because he is a mandatory. I think he is a fair mandatory to have, but at the same time, you could make a good fight out of those two. But if you want to see the fight that makes the most money, I think him and Anthony Joshua or him and Tyson Fury, you have it in England again. We already seen what happened with him and Anthony Joshua. Some people believe Anthony Joshua wasn't on his game. Other people believe that Daniel Dubois was just better. Again, that's a debate for a different time. However, Dubois versus Tyson Fury makes a good fight as well. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I think that would be a very good fight. You could make him a Wilder. I would be happy with Dubois fighting any top heavyweight right now, because I do think Dubois is an entertaining fight, and I do think he is a stylistic matchup that's interesting for a lot of fighters besides Alexander Usyk. However, I would love to see Moses Atama get that heavyweight title shot. For me, at least, because I'm a big Moses Atama fan, I think he is a dog. I think that guy is the future of the heavyweight division, as I've said a million times in the last 5 minutes, but I truly believe it. So for me, Moses Atama, Daniel Dubois, for the entire boxing world, I wouldn't mind seeing Dubois versus Fury. I feel like that should have happened after he beat Anthony Joshua. We didn't get it. Now this is a perfect time to get Dubois versus Tyson Fury. So I'm all for that fight as well. And we're going to have to see what happens. Again, shout out to Daniel Dubois on becoming a 2-time heavyweight champion, the new WBO heavyweight champion at that. As far as Fabio Wardley, keep your head up. I do believe Fabio Wardley will be back in that title picture pretty soon. I think it was a bad performance. I think he could definitely clean up some things. I think he can definitely bounce back. And again, he's still relatively young, so who knows what's at stake for Fabio Wardley in the future. With all that being said, it's time for us to log off. Make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all continue to tune into the YouTube, all podcast platforms, the social medias. Make sure y'all continue to like, share, comment, subscribe, follow. And last but not least, make sure y'all continue to stay on point with the Puncher's Point.